Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Saturday. Now, fishing with one rod is not ideal. It's not something I do a whole lot because I'm always looking for the next opportunity. I'm always trying to figure out the newest, hottest technique going on in the lake. And a lot of times, if you can figure that out, you will catch the biggest fish and have the best days doing that. But there's also times where you are wasting your time with more than one rod. So I'm gonna go into that. Guys, there's nothing worse than being not rigged up correctly or not, having what you need to catch bass. But there's also those days where you're just going to waste a lot of time winding something around when they're only biting stuff that's slow moving on the bottom. There's days where you may catch a lot of bass, but they're all going to be small. So I'm going to go into a couple specific details there that I think will help you not only during the spawn, but also in the pre-spawn, also in the post-spawn as we start to get that time of year. But we're not there yet. And I think you see this one rod Todd thing being a deal right now in competitive fishing, shaking a minnow. It's what everyone is doing. But you're going to see some more scenarios like this unfold as we get a little bit into the springtime. But guys, I want to thank you for liking these videos, subscribing. That helps the channel out a lot. If you haven't yet, please hit that button. And I really do appreciate you for that. All right, so here's the deal with me in the tournaments that I've done really well with one rod. And I also have seen this bank fishing and all the other times that you're just going to bring out one rod is that typically, it's when the fish are doing a specific thing. So yesterday I did a video on you need a bunch of rods when the fish are in transition. You need a couple rods when the water is real cold and the fish are kind of acting in a hibernation type mood. And then there's times of year when every fish on the lake is doing one thing and you shouldn't be messing around with anything else other than the bait that is going to catch those fish. So in the pre-spawn, I was fishing a tournament on Lake Guntersville. This was like 10 years ago. And Saturday, there was a big tournament, a BFL. Anyone can use whatever they want. No fish weighed in over 8 pounds. Then there was a big tournament on Sunday. 3 fish weighed over 10 pounds, but everyone had to be throwing a lipless crankbait. So it's a testament that a lipless crankbait is a big fish bait, but it's also a testament, kind of obvious, that if everyone is throwing a big fish bait, way more big fish are going to be weighed in. Now, that's not the best way to fish a tournament. That's not the best way to go out and catch a bunch of fish, but it just goes to show that if you are locking one bait in your hand that catches big fish, you're going to catch more big fish. There you go. Pretty obvious, but that's not always, what your first thought is when you go out there and you're not catching big fish. And that's kind of the Florida mentality is we keep it very simple down there. We don't try to do too many things and you're targeting big fish, and that's a good way to target big fish. Now, I will say, once you get into the spawn, there's not a whole lot of baits that are designed for spawn. You have Texas rigs and Senkos, but really you need something that is going to stay in their bed. If you're on a highland reservoir, maybe it's a crankbait, but you need something that is going to stay in their bed and that you can really just keep it in front of the fish's face. So for me, that's typically a wacky rig, Texas style Senko, or a Texas rig, 3/8 ounce weight, probably my favorite that I'm pitching around or casting around bedding areas. Now, the one rod, to me, is a no-brainer in the bed fishing time, even if I can see the fish or I cannot, is when you have a big warming trend, a couple weeks, full moon, everything is coming to the bank. Even if it's a little bit earlier in the year, I've seen this like early April where the fish haven't yet spawned, but you have a massive wave come to the bank because of that unseasonably warm weather. You basically can skip all the pre-spawn stuff. And if you try to pattern the fish on the pre-spawn stuff, a lot of times that will get you in trouble. Just go straight to the bank. Big warming trend, early, spawning time, but still spring, go straight to the bank and you'll have a lot better day. And again, you just need one rod for that. It's not so much about catering to the bass. It's about getting a bait that you can fish in their beds, keep it in there. And it's going to change a little bit, but for the most part, once you figure out that key bait, you can just run with that all over the lake and the bait doesn't become that important. And I've also witnessed in the post spawn where you are catching a bunch of fish, but they're all cookie cutter small ones. That's when one rod really becomes a big deal. For me, I live on a pretty clear lake, so I throw a swim bait a lot in the post spawn. And the obvious thing to me in that is, if you're catching a bunch of fish, but you're not seeing any quality, and it doesn't always have to be a swim bait, there's other options, but you just keep getting bites. I'm not the type of guy that's, oh, I'm going to upsize my worm. I'm just going to move on to something else. And I did this a couple weeks ago on a river where I grew up in Florida. You could get a bunch of bites on a speed worm. You could get a bunch of bites on a slow moving worm on the bottom, but no quality there. You know, after you set the hook about 7 or 8 times, then you realize that I'm gonna have to set the hook 30 times before I find any quality. There's something else going on. And if you don't have a whole lot of other types of places to fish, structure, offshore, something like that, you're gonna be fishing in the same areas. That's when the bait becomes very important to a degree, and then you just roll with that. So what I did was I switched to a chatterbait. A chatterbait on any lake that doesn't have some type of submergent vegetation, for me, typically when you do get bit on it, especially in the pre-spawn, they're big. So just roll with the chatterbait, significantly less bites, significantly more size, but all I needed was one rod, and it was gonna be better than basically anything else you could throw. So that's it, one rod. Pond fishing, bank fishing, you'll find yourself out there a lot of times going, man, I didn't bring the right thing, or days where you're like, I know I didn't need anything else, I crushed them. But there's nothing worse than not being rigged up correctly, but there's also days where you're wasting a lot of time with everything other than that one bait you need. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.